All right, guys, in today's video, I'm going to show you guys the truth behind spending 32K a day on Facebook ads. And I'll tell you guys lightly, it's not all fun and games. There's a lot of things you have to have prepped and prepared to be able to spend to these types of levels. And I'll jump into Facebook real quick just to show you guys that it's not just a screenshot. All of this is real. So let's refresh the screen. As you can see, September 7th, 2025, 32K, $517 in spend. If we go back in here, it matches the same thing as a screenshot. My camera for a second. I know you guys need to see my beautiful face, so my bad on that. But anyways, guys, this is the truth behind it. And believe it or not, I'll say a few things off the rip, which we're going to break down. But on this 32.5K in spend, we would be losing money if it was just according to Facebook. But we are actually hyper profitable on this on the same day because of the other mechanisms that we have in place. One of them is being Amazon, which I'll get into in just a second. One of the other ones is because we have recurring revenue coming in and MRR. So in this video, whether you have MRR or not, whether you have Amazon or not, I'm going to give you guys how we have it set up, our ecosystem, and you guys can decide if it's worth you guys getting those pieces set up or integrated into your business. That's up to you guys, but I'm just going to show you guys how we do it. This is going to be more of an advanced guide, to be honest. So probably if you're doing under $100,000 a month, this won't be as relevant for you. But if you're above that level, have some form of a subscription program in place, this is going to be very useful for you guys. My name is Elon Moose, by the way, and on this YouTube channel, I'm currently documenting my journey of scaling to $100 million a year in sales, going through the stuff that works, the stuff that doesn't work, and really just showing you guys in real time how all this comes together. And also, I usually have nothing to sell you guys, but right now I'm actually opening up 10 consulting slots. So the thing is, you have to be doing at least $100,000 a month to qualify. But if that's you, this consulting program allows you to work one-on-one with me directly, my co-founders, and my team for us to give you hands-on access, daily support from us, our open-sourced SOP and frameworks that we're using to scale our brands, giving you really just a full comprehensive overview to help you scale from 6 figures a month to 7 figures a month and beyond that, really giving you everything you would possibly need. So if that's you and that sounds interesting and you've seen some of my stuff, you can check the link out below. With that being said, let's jump into the video. So let's go into point number 1, which is I don't give a shit about CAC or ROAS. And that sounds counterintuitive. And you guys have probably seen some of my other videos that I talk about this all the time. But I actually care about a specific type of ROAS, which is NROAS, meaning new customer ROAS. So that's when I'm looking at the Facebook metrics now, I've shifted my whole perception to pretty much eliminate ROAS. And I'll tell you, this was a path where first off, I started using, so I use Hyros. Shout out to Hyros and Alex Becker for that platform because it's awesome. I love the integration directly into the Facebook Ads Manager. But I would use ROAS, and they have a feature on there where I can ignore subscription revenue, because the thing is, when you're looking at scaling a campaign, I don't care about subscription revenue because that's from another time period where I'm now tracking those sales. So that's irrelevant for me when I'm trying to scale on Facebook. So I would ignore it, then use ROAS. Then what I start to notice is that we still would have returning customers that would come in that would also inflate that ROAS. So now that number is pretty much completely irrelevant to me. And the only thing I look at is the NROAS, which is a feature that I have on Hyros. If you guys use Triple Whale, that's very straightforward with how you can find that type of number. Usually you're going to have a third-party tracking tool. So even Google Analytics, you could probably find something along those lines that will show it. I'm not using that for my media buying. That's just how I use it. But long story short, the reason why I'm only looking at this number is because I run a subscription-based brand, meaning that for a large percentage of our new customers that we're bringing in, they're opting into our subscription program. Now we're already above 90% on that, close to 95% most days. And because of that, we're always looking at bringing new customers in, because each new customer we bring in, that will equate to revenue that will come in on the next month and the next month. And we have that. We're really pacing this out over 12 months. This might sound a little bit complex, but pretty much I have some other videos where I break that down. But just what you need to understand right now is that each month we know that a certain percentage on a monthly basis of the customers that opt into the subscription will stay. So for example, on month 1, it could be that 80% of the customers will stay and renew on the subscription. On month 2, it might be 50% of the customers will renew on the subscription. On month 3, it might be 40%, and so on and so forth, all the way up for 12 months. Obviously, those numbers are going to vary and be different between every single brand, but because we know that, it allows us to pace out our projections for 12 months where we can plot it out based on each new cohort, meaning on a monthly basis, how many new customers are we going to go and acquire, which is how we set our targeting, which I'll get into in just a second. But that's the North Star that we're looking at, is how many new customers are we trying to bring in? and what is going to be on the Facebook platform, the amount we're willing to spend on those new customers. Hence, that's what the ROAS number is. And that's the only metric as of now that I care about with Facebook when I'm doing my scaling. Now, in regards to CAC, so you guys are probably wondering, why don't I care about CAC? So I somewhat care about NCAC, which again, that's new customer CAC, whenever there's that little N in the front of it. But I don't care as much about it because my North Star is actually more on the return on ad spend, or MER standpoint, which I'll get into in just a second. Because the thing is, for me and my brand, is our AOV, our average order value, fluctuates a ton. Because that can be different every single day. And the reason why we have that is because we have additional offers before people actually finish the checkout. We have upsells on the back end side of things. We have slide card offers where we give people more things to add on. And because of that nature, your AOV is going to be different on a daily basis. And when your AOV is different on a daily basis, that means your CAC can't be at a flat rate. So for me, that number is less relevant because we can set our target, but it doesn't actually matter if the AOV doesn't line up to reach those targets. So that's why I'm usually looking at the blended efficiency level, which comes from the ROAS standpoint. So that's point number one. I don't give a shit about CAC or ROAS, right? Counterintuitive, but hopefully you guys understand now. Okay, point number two, which I already alluded to before, but it's, if it were just based on the Facebook metrics alone, I'd be losing money. But because of the ecosystem that I have, I'm still profitable on day one. And just so you guys also understand, right now, the fact that we're profitable on day one at this type of spend is pretty impressive, because we could probably be spending, as of right now, at least X the amount that we're spending. So we're really reserving ourselves right now at this type of spend level, just because for us in our current position, we're really trying to pace out and plan for Q4. So to do that, we need to order a bunch of inventory ahead, which right now we have enough inventory based on our projections, which I'll get into in just a moment of how we even look at that part. For us, it's very important right now, especially when you have a subscription program, that you don't overspend, because if customers start to buy and the subscription timelines don't start to line up and there's delays in the orders and then the reshipments happen, the problem will be that you're going to have a much higher churn rate on those customers, which inevitably, if you have projections based on what you think those cohort datas will be, what I said before, like month 1, month 2, month 3, it's going to be all off if you start to mess with the shipment. So with a subscription business specifically, it's more important than any type of other business where you actually can time that correctly. Where I know a lot of people will say you can do pre-orders. First off, from my experience of doing that, customers still usually get pissed. But even if they don't get pissed, it doesn't work with this because it's going to hurt your subscription numbers. I can guarantee that. We've seen that every single time we've tried to scale past what our inventory is allowed, and we've even had slight delays, that even like a week delay, it completely screws up the whole ecosystem on that. For us, what we've learned is that we have to be very on pace with projecting ahead of time. So for us, and this is a little bit of a side tangent, but hopefully it's helpful, we have our projections set out already 12 months in advance. We know at each month how many new customers we want to acquire. MER, which we're going to get into in just a second on what that number is, but for now, we'll just call it the ROAS on Facebook, is allowing us to spend way more than that 32K a day. We could be spending probably 50 to 60K a day, given the current run rate that we have. We know that if we overextend that, it will screw up the inventory projection and put us over just the overall projections that we had. So going back to the main point of point number 2 is where on Facebook metrics alone, so I'm not going to go over what our target NMER is or NROAS is in this scenario, but just so you guys understand, based on that, it's lower than what our break-even ROAS would be, which means if we just look at the Facebook platform directly, we would be losing money. But because of what I said in the beginning, we have Amazon, which for this brand does close to 25% to 30% of whatever we do on Facebook revenue. That comes in, gives us a nice boost on the same day on the revenue that we generate from Amazon because of that halo effect that we have. And because we already have the MRR component, which is the subscription revenue that's coming in every single day, we know what our numbers are on that, where it's going to balance out and bring us to profitability on a daily basis right now. So a caveat on this, guys, and I mentioned this in a lot of my other videos, and where we're trying to go a bit into post Q4 when we really start to ramp up the numbers, is we want to be in a place where we can lose money on a daily basis and still be okay, because we know what our projections look like in terms of the subscriptions that we're having come in from the future months, that we're okay with front loading some of those losses on day one so that it can all extend out, which we would be in the position to do, but we are opting to not do that until after Q4, because right now, again, a little bit of a side tangent, but each month we want to scale up, right? So we're trying to scale our new customer base every single month by like for Q4, our target is between 30 to 40% boost month over month, which means we have to be very strategic with pacing everything out, where we're planning out the exact inventory amount, the exact amount of cash we need to buy that inventory. So we really need everything to be super orchestrated right now. And that's why, for example, what I said before, of even though we're already spending 32K a day and could spend 50 to 60K a day, we're not doing that because then that's going to hurt our future targets and our future projections, which screws up the ecosystem as a whole. So for us right now, just going on to this point where the scale really starts to come in, is that we know Q4, we're going to be able to still stay profitable on a daily basis and probably scale up to those types of targets. Now, after Q4, it's going to become a bit more difficult. And that's where we want to play our card, where we say, okay, we're okay now with losing some money. Now we have all this built up subscription revenue that's going to support us on a ratio level, where we know that we have all that returning revenue coming in to support the brand and support the ecosystem. Plus, we still have that Amazon Halo boost. Plus, we know what our retention numbers are with all the data. So we know that when we acquire these customers, even though we're losing maybe 20 to 30% on day one, we know that we're going to either make that money back on day 30, day 60, and maybe extend that all the way out to day 90 if we want to go into like hyperscale mode continuing over the year, because it gives us the leeway and it gives us the room to still make everything happen. Hopefully that all makes sense of what I'm presenting on that. But long story short for this point, which is again counterintuitive, I don't give a fuck about my CAC. I don't give a fuck about my ROAS. I don't give a fuck about profitability. You guys would think it's crazy, but hopefully now you're starting to understand how this all makes sense within the overall ecosystem. Point number 3 is, what's more important than NROAS is NMER, which I wanted to mention. I preluded to it before. So NMER is essentially the same thing, but when I'm looking at this, it's the blended marketing efficiency ratio. That's what MER means. So when I'm looking at blended marketing efficiency ratio, I'm including now the other channels, which for us, like our target on NROAS on Facebook will be lower than what the NMER is, because NMER also includes other channels that we advertise on, like Google, for example, like native ads, like AppLovin, for example. So all those other advertising channels that have different ad spend, all those come together within a collective ecosystem where I'm looking at the blended level of what we're getting. So in the overall revenue that we're acquiring from those different advertising channels, divided by the overall spend that we have combined between those channels to get the NMER, and the overall revenue only from new customers, not, so we're pulling that number directly from Shopify, where we're looking at what's the new customers that we brought into Shopify as the platform. And then based on that, we're dividing it by the spend that we have over there, because this is essentially all the Shopify revenue. We're not including Amazon on that. That's like the main thing that we're taking out. And for new customer revenue, that's obviously not going to include any of the subscription revenue. So very simple metric to actually look at. And this is the most important North Star metric when we're doing all those projections. So when I mentioned earlier that we do those projections on the yearly basis, we're setting our target completely based on the NMER target. This is my little pen. I brought the pen back into this. So overall, the NMER, again, guys, this is like the North Star metric that we're doing all of our targets based on. Okay. So point number 4, I already know how much I'm going to spend on this month and the following month. So let me just recap, because I think this might be a bit confusing right now because I went into a lot of different directions. So I want to just condense all this information so you guys understand what I'm talking about. So first off, counterintuitively, I don't care about my CAC and I don't care about my traditional ROAS, especially on Facebook platform directly. All I care about on Facebook is what's the cost for me to acquire a new customer there. Now, in terms of the new customers, I'm going to skip to point number 3 because I think this blends a little bit better with it, is that the thing that I actually only care about is the NMER, which is the overall efficiency ratio, because Facebook can have off days, can have better days, but as long as my blended number between all the different channels that I have, and because we have support systems from Google, which will always typically have a higher ROAS because of brand search and things like that, and then some other channels where usually they're going to have better efficiency ratios, you're just not going to be able to spend as much on it. Because you have all those different supporting systems all together, that blended number is going to be higher. And that's the number that I really care about and I'm trying to make sure is fully optimized. Even though on Facebook directly, I might be losing money just on the numbers I have there, but because I first off have the blended ecosystem, that's going to probably bring it to profitability. Then because of Amazon within itself, which is a certain percentage and a certain ratio, that brings it to more profitability. And then because I have all that subscription revenue coming in, that also brings it to profitability on the same day, even when Facebook is losing me money. So that's how all of these pieces come together, which then leads to this point, which I just said. 12-month projection, what I'm doing is I'm setting how many new customers do I want to bring in. So at the start of each month, this month, next month, the following months, all the way up for 12 months, I already know how many new customers my target is to bring in on the month. And my job, even if I have the room to scale a lot more aggressively, is to try to stay within those parameters. Now, of course, I might spend a little bit more if we have a lot of room. The efficiency is crazy. We might go and acquire new customers, especially if we can allow for the inventory to make sense. But my red flag where I can't spend more and where I won't spend more is if we can't make a way to get more inventory there in time, because that, again, will screw up the whole ecosystem. But long story short, at the start of the month, we know where we're going to spend. And my main objective, like what I have to optimize, is the NMER. And as long as this number can stay optimized, I'm good. Like I'm going to keep going month over month and scaling. Now, if this number is not optimized, that's where I have a video where I went into it more from a ROAS standpoint, but it still applies, where it's breaking down exactly why that efficiency ratio isn't there. So like from this level, based on the other video, which, I'll try to link that down below, where I show how you can break down ROAS to show you exactly what's broken in your funnel somewhere. With this number, for example, the first thing you need to understand is what channel isn't holding their weight. And if it's, let's say it's Google that all of a sudden the performance dropped, then you have to look at it zoomed into that channel specifically. But if it does come down to Facebook, then that ROAS video applies, where it's like, what is the problem here? Is it something on Facebook directly, something with the targeting, something with our audience over there? If it's not something there, is it something on the creative side? Is our creative's efficiency worse? Are we just not having winners come in? If winners still keep on coming in, we see a problem with the funnel side. Maybe some metrics there have really fallen off. Maybe the AOV is lowered. So really, like, you're trying to break down what exactly is stopping you from being able to get to that spend. And that is my job on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, is just making sure that number can stay in par. That's what the team's job is. That's what my job is. And as long as that's on par, we can spend and acquire those new customers. So or less, how much monthly recurring revenue you're going to have coming in. Because with that MRR number, and if you're using Recharge or if you're using, what's the other one, Loop, there's a few big ones that a lot of people use, right? That's going to tell you what your projection is on the following month of how much you should have coming in. And as long as you're looking at that number and know how to estimate, because sometimes it might over project on those. So you have to look at what that actual ratio will be. You can know how much you'll have coming in, which allows you to be a lot more comfortable with spending more because you already have a fixed amount of revenue that's coming in to start you off on the month. Okay. And then the next part is I know what percentage also I make on Amazon. So this number has been a very constant number for us, which it can fluctuate, but it's usually between 20 to 30% of whatever we do on the blended advertising level. We're going to make that exact ratio back on Amazon. So because we know that ratio that we're going to be making, that also gives me a lot more ness. I don't know if that's a word, but comfortableness to then be able to go out and do that spending on Facebook. Accuracy, because so the reason why that allows me to do it with accuracy is because I have all these fixed variables. For example, the MRR, I already know how much of that is going to be coming in. Amazon ratio, I know more or less what that ratio will be on that spend. The only thing I'm doing is setting a fixed target of how many new customers I want to bring in. And then based on that, how much do I need to spend at this NMER target? So the only thing that's really a variable is the NMER, which obviously is a big thing, guys. Don't get me wrong on it. But as long as you have competency and you have data and you understand how those channels will perform and you actually understand your market and you actually understand how to do marketing at a very high level, this is something that's very controllable once you understand how to identify bottlenecks that are causing the inefficiencies there that are hindering you from actually scaling. Okay, so the next one I want to go into is point number 5, which is the ratio between returning customer percentage and new customer percentage. So this kind of falls in line with everything that I said before, but this is like a really nice ratio to understand profitability on day one, especially. So I think what a good number from what I've seen so far, and this might change, so don't do a hard quote on this, is that 30% returning customers, like ratio. So returning customer being primarily like your subscription revenue. So what percentage is that going to make of your overall revenue? Of course, it could also just be returning customers that you have coming in general. But for the most part, it will be subscription. If you guys don't have subscription, you can look at it mainly on the returning customer aspect. But 30% for us has been a good ratio, especially when we're in scaling mode. And at high scale, when you really push this forward, so where I imagine we'll probably be in like 18 months or so, we'll probably be closer to around 70%. And 70%, you still can do massive scale, but because at that point, every single month, if you're doing this right, your subscription program is going to compound month over month until you're at multi-millions a month that you already just know are coming in. So once you're at, let's say 5 million a month, that's coming in automatically from a subscription standpoint, that percentage will probably be like 70% of your overall revenue. And if you go out and acquire $2 million in new customers, now you're at 7 million. And maybe that goes up even higher. I know people personally that are above 10 million a month on that. And the biggest brands are a lot of them that you guys know of. They're also like doing tens of millions that are automatically coming in. So that's just an important ratio to look at to understand when you're in scaling mode, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. But it's just a helpful number. It doesn't make or break anything. It just will help you again with the predictability aspect of everything. Okay, so then we go into point number 6, which is all of this comes together and it makes spend become a science, right? Because what you have over here, so point number 6 is that now what happens is you know how much you plan to spend, right? Because again, you're setting the target of how much you're going to spend at the start of each month. So you have that number already set. Then number 2 is your goal is to make sure you can keep the NMER going, right? So you have to make sure that this number doesn't completely fall flat, because then, you know, all of those other projections you have won't actually make it. So this is the most constant variable that's always changing, where that's essentially the marketing team core function, is to make sure that this number stays going. Obviously, in theory, it sounds simplistic, but very complicated to actually do that, especially at higher levels of scale. But that's the main variable that shifts that you have to be focused on. Then what happens is that your creatives will fatigue. So the main thing that you really have to focus on when we think about this, probably 60 to 70% of the battle comes down to creatives, right? So if you can produce good creatives consistently and have new winners come into the account and have a good solid hit ratio, then you're probably going to be good on this number. So this is really, if we start to bake down probably where most of the effort goes, it then goes into creatives. And this is probably what you hear most of the time. And it's very true, because this is the thing that kind of makes or breaks this number, because Facebook is usually the biggest spender within NMER. And if Facebook goes down, the whole ecosystem goes down. So all in all, as long as you have good creatives output, if we break this down into the 80-20 rule, right? If you have good creatives output that feed the system, then this overall system works well, because you know how much you're going to spend, you know what your target new customer projections are, and you know that the main variable that will change or allow you to get it or not get there is this number. This number breaks down. That was really fucking shitty. It looks like I crossed it out. It's supposed to be circled. But this number is mainly determined by creatives, right? And creatives is the main variable. So all of this kind of is a long-winded way to say that creatives is the most important thing to actually making all this work. By the way, I want to attach a video below. So I'm going to have a video of creatives here for you to be able to check out. So I'll show you guys my process of how I consistently make winning creatives. That will be the next video up here. All in all, guys, just to recap on this, okay? So spending 32K a day comes down to really a science at this point for us. We could be spending way more than this. The reason why we don't is because we're setting out our projections. So at a high level, first thing we're doing is we're setting out the projections. We know how much we want to spend each month for the next 12 months. And that's all based on our previous data. Plus, we're looking at how many new customers we want to bring in. And then what is going to be our target NMER at a high level is the main metric there. Now, when we bake that down into this Facebook spend, that's going to come into ROAS, which is a portion of what makes up our overall NMER within this ecosystem to actually make the whole thing work. Now, based on that, we also are still profitable on day one, even though on Facebook itself, we're not profitable, because we have the overall NMER ecosystem, right? So those other channels, like I mentioned, we have subscription revenue coming in, and then we also have a percentage of whatever we're spending on Amazon that allows us all to be still very profitable on day one, even as we're scaling. And because of all this, then I already know at the start of each month how much I plan to spend on the month. I know what our ratio will be between returning customers versus new customers, which allows us to always stay within a good profitability zone, because that's a very predictable variable. The only thing that's not predictable is the NMER. But if you have good data, if you're good at marketing, if you have a good team, and if you get good creatives every single week, your NMER will probably be good. If not, you have to know how to diagnose it. That's a big piece. And if you guys actually want help with installing this whole system into your business and you're doing above $100,000 a month, I'm going to do a quick plug right now. We're opening up a consulting program, me and my business partners, and we're also going to be working with our team for this. So if you guys are interested and you watch this whole video and you watch a lot of my videos, I want to help you guys plug in our actual system with our actual spreadsheets, everything that we do, set up a roadmap and game plan, audit your business, and give you a way to work with me and my team on a weekly basis to execute and help you scale to $1 million a month and beyond that. So if you guys are interested, there will also be a link down below that's just a soft plug only for select people that this will make sense for. So thank you guys for watching, and tune in for next week's video.